So welcome everybody. For those that don't know me, I am Eclemus Ricks, President, Chapter of NSBE Austin Professional. Today is Tuesday, May 12th, and we are wrapping up the fiscal year in a sense with our general body that will go on break over the summer with this last virtual meeting as we are in the midst of a global pandemic called COVID-19. As we always do, we start with the NSBE mission. Most of the time we recite this together, so if you're on mute, that's fine. Maybe you can read it with me. We'll go all at one time. 1, 2, 3. Vision to increase the number of culturally responsible Black engineers who excel academically, succeed professionally, and positively impact the community. And so we always start there, just to level on the purpose of our meetings as well as the initiatives that we set forth to do all of this mission. So that's for new people that are joining for the first time, but also for our previous members. Agenda for today, we're going to talk a few points about upcoming events and the NSBE 46 update if you haven't seen the correspondence on that yet. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have a bit of a bookkeeping item for elections. So we are trying to ease our way into being more formal with our election process. And with COVID, we've had to kind of readjust, but we're going to give it a shot this time around as a part of this meeting. And then hopefully next year we'll find it and get more of a streamlined process for elections. But starting after that, we'll go into the introduction of our guest speakers, Iffy, Ibekwe, and thank you for joining us today to speak on our today's topic. And I'll do that introduction, and then I believe Iffy has a couple slides she wants to go through and turn it over to Ron to do the same. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. And as I said, there'll be the chat available as well as the raise hand feature if you want to ask your question live. So as far as upcoming events, we were planning to have one in April of 2020. COVID kind of put that into a event into a delayed state. So we were trying to brainstorm on ways we could engage even with the uncertainty to meet in person, and the idea of a virtual movie night came up. So what we're planning to do is to view this documentary called General Magic, and it basically tells the story of one of the history's most talented technology team, but you may not have even heard of them just simply because of the company not being around anymore. But this is kind of the predecessor of the iPhone and the Apple and all the other companies that have kind of been launched out off of the idea of the smartphone. All kind of came, and some of the same players were involved at General Magic. So we're excited to do this as a kind of a virtual event. So what we're doing is we're going to basically have a Zoom meeting, but we're going to share a link to log in and watch the movie live. And we'll all be on that separate link at the same time. And then after the viewing of the movie, we'll actually have a panel, a couple of people that were involved in the movie, as well as at General Magic, where we'll have a Q&A. So excited to kind of get some behind the scenes explanations and more context to the movie itself. So that will be on Thursday, May 28th, starting showtime starts at 6:30. Again, if you go to Eventbrite, I'll post these links into the chat just for you to be able to click on it. We'll have sign up for that. That's live now, and you'll be able to log log into the Zoom, and I'll be sharing it, like streaming it through the Zoom, but the quality is kind of shaky, so we decided to have a direct link you to be able to stream it directly right through a conference call line. But if you stay on that line, we'll have the panel discussion after that. So excited about that. Please give me a second here, and I'm gonna post both links here for everybody. One to the Joint Magic website, so you can see the information about it. So the first link is to the movie documentary site, and then the other is to Federation. So if you haven't heard already, I want to give an update on the NSBE 46 conference. The original date was in March. We had to basically push that out in order to accommodate the changing times of this pandemic. And the new dates are August 19th through the 23rd. There was a virtual career fair that was held in April. There was correspondence for those that were already registered for the convention to be able to participate in that. I think it was over 2 days, and there were I think over 7 participants, I believe. To date, they have about 8,000 registered for this new date in August. We're looking at it, personally, I'm looking at it based on what things have changed or will change as far as COVID. But I kept my registration. You can go to convention.nsbe.org to get more information, but it looks like there will be a conference this year. Now, if you are used to the professional development conference, you probably have heard as well that one is canceled for this year. So it was supposed to be in Miami because of the changing of the date, national convention being close to basically a week behind the original schedule. We've decided, or the national organization decided to push that out. And so we are looking at this being the first event as far as a convention that will be in place for this year. So any questions on upcoming events? Post in the chat for any clarifications. I don't see any questions, so and my co-host let me know if people have raised their hand as well. I'm over here switching between screens. So I wanted to kind of give an update on or transition into elections. So, we as a board came in kind of in an interim fashion last year, and this year was kind of our first full year of being a board. So we're just getting finding our way really, and obviously COVID has made it special. But we did want to and had a plan to do elections at this month's meeting. Send out correspondence to the listserv to see if anybody was interested in serving. We have a number of elected positions. These are the ones you see on the screen right now. And then there's another list of appointed positions. So there's a lot of opportunity for service. And I would encourage anybody that had an inkling of an interest to reach out either to myself or Lakeisha Small at Vice President at NSBEAP.org or President at NSBEAP.org to sign up for a committee or be involved with one of these related positions. So we didn't get any nominations or applications for elected positions, the ones you see on the screen right now. We did have someone step up to fill in the finance chair position. That's a recent grad of Texas A&M, and was actually the finance chair for the North Carolina chapter where he's moving from. And he will be in Austin June. So I'm happy to welcome him to the board as in that appointed position of chair. And then for these other positions that and as well as the ones that are what I asked, since we didn't have any more nominations, I asked for all those people to resubmit, and they all happily did that. So they were kind of voluntold to stay. And so what we're doing today really is just confirming them, unless we have any other nominations for positions that you see here. Again, if you are interested in some of the other positions or just serving on a committee, feel free to send an email to me. But right now, what we're going to try to do is do just a quick poll. I'm going to open up this poll, and you'll be able to vote as the election for the positions that are elected. And yeah, are there any questions regarding that? Just making sure. Yes, Latanya, we should bring virtual popcorn and icy if you can make those at home. So I launched the poll as we continue to meet, and feel free to fill that out for election. Any questions regarding elections? And just so you know, we have 2 positions of senator that represent the chapter at our national event. And the poll is a separate kind of pop-up. If you don't see it, there may be another screen. I'm not sure what it looks like on mobile device for the poll, but look for a little blinking screen or something outside of the chat menu option. On my laptop, it just pops up as a different screen with the poll option. If you're having trouble viewing it, you may have to select multiple. For the senator, you want to make sure you select two names. Might be the only thing that causes an issue. All right, yeah, feel free to continue to chat with me if you're having problems with the elections. I'm going to move introductions so we can get our front and center. Is Iffy Ibekwe. Iffy is a principal attorney at Ibekwe Law. Iffy believes that every person deserves a plan to legally protect themselves and their loved ones. He has seen the consequences of results and families and children in the aftermath of an unexpected crisis when the legal affairs were not in order. It's a law firm to help intentional people prepare effective wills, trusts, and legal documents so that they and their families are secure in the event of a death or emergency. Iffy is committed to boldly and of the responsibility of effective estate planning. Additionally, she volunteers with CAN Law, a pro bono estate planning clinic that provides legal services to the cancer community, many of whom would not be able to afford traditional estate planning services. Iffy has called Austin, Texas home for over 20 years. She graduated from the University of Texas at Austin on law school, and then spent more than 12 years practicing law in the Austin before opening her own firm. She's a board chairman for Be the Bridge, a nonprofit dedicated to racial reconciliation. And when she's not gardening or savoring time with her husband and 4 children, Iffy runs her signature club, which is dedicated to the study and discussion of literature authored by women of color. And so I'll have an introduction from Ron as well. And then I will unmute Iffy for her to start the presentation. So welcome, Iffy. Our next guest speaker is Davis. And I guess I forgot to kind of preface the point of our guest today, you know, in talking through what we could talk about that will be relevant at this time and period of our society. We felt like it was important to kind of focus and help those who may not have thought about this pandemic. And, you know, COVID obviously has had a significant impact on the lives of individuals. And I've seen personally a number of people that have had COVID. And so we wanted to make sure people were given the tool plan for, you know, the inevitable. And so we thought, you know, one side, you know, you want to talk about insurance, you want to talk about what options are available, especially with varying age groups, what would be beneficial, but then also on the side of planning, how to actually make sure what you plan out and what you pay for in terms of life insurance is provided to those who you leave behind. And so we thought it'd be helpful to have both a lawyer who focuses on estate planning and wills as a life insurance expert. And so we're happy to have both of them kind of here to answer questions that you may have and bring forth some actionable things you can do as we're this pandemic. So Ron Davis is a personal finance representative from Allstate. Started his career with John Hancock in 1968 as an agent. He was promoted to sales manager, regional sales supervisor, recruiting west of the Mississippi to the west of coast, and then district manager in Texas. He's also been with Allstate as a personal financial representative since February of 1995, receiving many company awards, even interviewed on KXAN Studio 512 a few years ago. So welcome to Ron. Ron, I will unmute you as well as we start the presentation, but I'm going to turn it over to, so let me get here. Excellent. All right, you're live, Iffy. Do you need me to switch over, right?
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all so much for inviting me to the NSBE professionals meeting. And I'm always eager and honored when a group of African-American people ask me to speak on estate planning, because that is the smallest demographic that I get in my doors at my law firm who are getting their estate planning done. And it's something that I am very passionate about. It is 95% of my practice. And I've helped hundreds of families in the Austin areas, as well as individuals, to establish an estate plan, which, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm going to do a very brief, but hopefully helpful overview on how it is important and can impact your life. Okay. Next slide. I guess Aklimus, you're controlling the slides. This is just a little bit about me. Like Aklimus said, he's already covered all of that. So we can go to the nitty gritty of what is an estate plan. So I believe that estate planning is for everyone, and that if you have nothing right now, that by the time you leave this conversation, you can think of some documents that you can get in order for yourself, to protect the assets that you went to school for so long to acquire, and to protect your families. Okay, so let me talk about some of the basic documents that are contained in an estate plan. And when I talk about an estate plan, I mean it in a holistic sense. It's not just a will, right? A lot of people think, oh, I need to get my will, or I need to do a financial power of attorney. A complete estate plan is comprised of basic documents, which I'll go over in a few minutes. And then there's some other documents that you may want to consider. For example, if you are a business owner, or if you set up a different business structure and you want to make sure those assets are passed on, or if you have products like life insurance or retirement and other quote unquote non-probate assets, that's what they call them in court. So when you think about a basic estate plan, the first document everyone thinks about is the will, which is a last will and testament. And this is just a document that says, when I die, here's how I want my stuff to go. Most married couples say that they want their property to go to their surviving spouse, and then to either their children or whomever is important in their life in various percentages or shares. And this is a great way of making sure that you close up loose ends when your life is over. What happens is you appoint someone to be an executor of your will and of your estate. And what that means is that upon your death, they go to court and say, hey, this person has died. I'm going to be in charge of winding up their affairs. And it's really helpful to have a will, because if you don't have a will, you end up dying what's called intestate. And that just means that the state that you reside in will get to decide how to pass on your property. So if you haven't designated who you want it to go to, it'll say, well, they died, they had no kids, so we're going to give it to their parents in equal share. You might be estranged from a parent. You may not have wanted it to go that way. You may have wanted to set up some sort of fund for a niece or nephew, or you may have wanted to give your money and property in other ways, or your house in other ways. So it's very important to set up a will to let people know what you would want. And you don't have to have a house to have a will. You don't have to be rich to have a will. You can have a will just to let people know where all your things are and who you'd want them to go to, right? And it doesn't even have to say my shoes go to this, my book collection, my record collection, blah, blah, blah. You can just say you want your property to be shared even in thirds, and your executor, the person that you appoint, will be in charge of doing so. It just gives them some sort of instructions, and it makes it easier to get access to everything when you have it all planned out, rather than, oh, they'll just deal with it when I die, which is a terrible thing to do to your loved ones, is to have no plan. The next documents are your financial and medical power of attorney. These two documents just allow you to appoint someone to be an agent on your behalf for medical or financial decision making. The medical power of attorney only goes into effect if you're incapacitated, say you're unconscious, you cannot consent for yourself as certified by a doctor. In that instance, you can get a medical power of attorney. And your agent is someone that you trust to make decisions based on your religious, your moral, your just preferences in life. So you'd pick somebody that makes sense. Again, if you're married, most people pick their spouse. But some people know, oh, my spouse is not going to be good at medical decisions. I want my sister to do it. It doesn't matter who you pick. You can pick any adult to be in charge. And then you can also have successors. So if the first person's unavailable, you can have a second and third. And all these documents allow you to have successors that you can appoint. The next one is the financial power of attorney. That one can go into effect either immediately, or it can go into effect upon a triggering or springing event. Like if you are incapacitated, then it goes into effect. And that's a very broad power that basically says, I'm allowing certain people or certain person to have access to my finances, my stocks, any financial related documents. You can limit it, or you can make it as broad as you want based on how your form is prepared. And so that's another really essential document. So if you're ever out of the country and you need somebody to help you pay a bill or your mortgage or something like that, that can come into play. I had an example of a lady at the cancer law clinic. She had just come out of a 2-month stint in the hospital, and she had gone in just for a routine checkup, but ended up being admitted. And then she was in a coma for 2 months. And she said that the first thing she wanted to do was make sure she set up a financial power of attorney to let her brother pay her mortgage, because she had not anticipated going into the hospital for 2 months, and she missed 2 mortgage payments, which is devastating. And she was afraid that she would, be in jeopardy of losing her house just because she hadn't set up anybody that could help her. And so those are those sorts of little things that you can set up in place, because that power that we set up for her only went into effect if she ended up in a situation like that again. Then he could go to the bank and make sure that her bills were paid and that she's not in jeopardy of losing any of her property. The next document that should be included in your estate plan is a HIPAA directive or a HIPAA authorization. It's just the same thing you think about when you go to the doctor or dentist's office. It says, here are my people who are my need to know list if anything were to happen to me. And they have access to my prognosis, diagnosis, results, and they don't have to jump through hoops to call if they're calling from out of state or out of the country or out of town to get what's going on with you, and because we have a federal privacy law, you can't just call up and get access to loved ones' records. Your mom can't just call and say, I need to know what's going on with my child. That does not work like that when your child is an adult. The next document is a living will, and not to be confused with a last will and testament. A lot of people think they need a living will, which they do, but a living will is an advance directive. It's actually an end of life document, and not to be confused with a do not resuscitate order. A living will says, if I'm ever in a coma with a terminal illness or unconscious with a terminal illness or a serious health condition, here is the type of medical intervention I'm comfortable with. You can state whether you want to be on breathing, feeding, any sort of artificial life support, or if at that point you would just want to go. And this has to be something that a doctor says, hey, we don't think they're going to make it more than 6 months, and certainly not without any kind of medical intervention. At that point, you can say, okay, I wouldn't want maximum pain relief and let me go to my maker. And this came about, if you remember Terry Schiavo, a couple of decades ago, I think now, where her family was fighting over what to do with her. And recently I read an article about a doctor in New York in a COVID unit who had about 55 patients. And out of those 55 patients, only one of them had an advance directive. And she said that she was just shocked that so few people have them. And she had a client that was in there, a 30-year-old male, and he had a terrible COVID, he wasn't gonna make it. But his parents were fighting about whether or not to, quote unquote, pull the plug and see how he does on his own or let him go. But he was in a vegetative state, and his mom and dad are now over his deathbed fighting with each other on what to do with him. And that's just not fair to put your loved one in that situation. But a 30-year-old man is not thinking, oh, I'm going to be sick and not come out of this. And so it's one of those things like, yes, we all wish to live till, the ripe old age of 100 and something. But in reality, if you can prepare for life's contingencies, it is a blessing, because even though they may not be ready to say, goodbye to you, God forbid, if something were to happen early, you have given them instructions so they know that they're making the right decisions or respecting your decisions, even if they don't think it's the right decision, right? And so that's the sort of document that you would prepare in that instance. And then something else that I do for my clients, I do guardianship documents, and it's a pre-need designation, basically saying if I'm ever incapacitated, if I'm ever not able to take care of myself, here are the people that I would want to take care of me. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have to go get a court-appointed guardian, you can already designate who that could be. That form also allows you to state to the court who you would not want it to be. So if I love my mom, but I don't want her to take care of me, you can say, I do not want this person to take care of me. And I do not want them to be in charge of my finances. Because sometimes people pop out the woodworks if they can take care of you and they're taking care of your money. They're like, yeah, I'll take care of them. And so, just in light of all the pandemic stuff, people sometimes are incapacitated for a temporary period of time. So if you have a temporary period of time where you need to have physical care and someone to physically take care of you or make decisions for your health or take you places, you can designate who that would be, especially if you are not able to communicate that at that time. it often helps to have the same person as the financial medical power of attorney be the person who is the guardian over your estate, which is your money, and your person, which is like your physical body. And then one of the last documents I like to prepare are final disposition instructions. And that just means that you can state whether you'd want to be buried, cremated, donate your body to science, have your body made into a diamond, whatever type of ceremony you would like, whether you've prepaid for funeral expenses. I know it sounds really morbid to talk about this stuff, but once you've done it, and I do it every day. So to me, it's not morbid. It's just like people pay for insurance for their car or they pay for health insurance. You just have it there when you need it, right? And so you can let your loved ones know, this is what I want. I had a client, she wanted her body to be dead, her body and her husband's body, they chose to donate it to the Texas State Body Farm because they want it to be used for forensic experiments and all sorts of things that the CSI type people do to figure out, you know, what sort of crime has taken place. And then the last thing you can do, and a lot of reasons that people come to me is because they want to make sure that their kids are taken care of, their minor children are taken care of if something were to happen to them. And you can also do guardianship documents similar to what I explained for an adult for young kids and designate who would be able to take care of them in that instance. Next slide, Clemus. Okay, and just really briefly, there's some more things that you can consider when you set up a will and last will and testament if you have minor children or even just young, new adults, as in plus 18 children. You can set up something called a testamentary trust. I won't go into super detail about that, but it allows you to leave assets to them. You can't just outright leave assets to minors without having some sort of guardianship or trust set up for them in order for them to be able to receive that property. And so that can be done through your will. Can also be done through a standalone revocable living trust, which is what a lot of people think of as a trust. A living trust that's revocable allows you to manage it while you're alive, and it doesn't lock until you pass away or you and your spouse pass away if you're co-trustees. That just means that you can set aside assets to go into a trust, which is just like a bank account, and then whoever the trustee is can pay it out to your kids or to people that you want the money to go to or causes or whatever you want to do with it according to your instruction. You run it while you're alive. When you pass away, the next trustee will run it and it'll be locked and those assets will be used for that. And then there are non-probate assets. Ron's going to talk about life insurance, which is something that everyone should have, that are not controlled by estate planning. Basically, whoever you designate on your estate plan, on your life insurance will get that money. The estate plan can't control that because that's a contract between you and whatever company you're buying that product from. And then there are also other things you can think about with your estate plan, like charitable giving. I have people leave money to causes that they are, they support, or any organizations that they want to see go on, as well as like pet organizations, or if you want to make a pet trust and leave money for the care of your pet or pets, you can do that. And then there are tax planning considerations as well. But because right now the estate tax is about $11.8 million per person, you're not finding a lot of tax planning going on. But if that number ever comes down, because it's the highest it's ever been to be taxed, your estate is taxable when it's over $11.8 million. If that ever comes down, it's been 1 million, which a lot of people have $1 million estates with life insurance and a home and some investments. It's very easy to have $1 million or 5 million, which it has been in the past. Then, you know, there might be some considerations there. Next slide. Okay, so what can you do next? This is a lot of information to have just thrown at you. And one thing, if I'm offering people, and you can go to the next slide at Clemus, is you should get in touch with someone who can talk or give you more information about your specific plan. Talk to your spouse or partner, your parents, about estate planning. If they have not done it, they really need to do it in order to make life easy for whoever's going to be handling their estate. It's not okay to just be hands off and say, it's too morbid, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to deal with it, I'm going to bury my head in the sand. That's not fair to your loved ones, and it does merit a conversation. Also talk to your spouse or partner about who would take care of your children if something were to happen to you, and figure out a plan of someone who you can agree would take care of your minor children, and get that in writing immediately. And then let people know, don't sleep on estate planning, people really need to do this. It's cheaper in the long run to set up a will than to die without one and have your estate either pay for it because you never set it up and they start selling your assets to pay for the whole process, or your family members to have to find that money to get a lawyer and to get things started, or they just leave it alone, or they start a GoFundMe or a cookout or all kinds of nonsense because nobody wanted to estate plan. And then you'll talk about life insurance. I love life insurance. You can always contact me if you are looking for a free consultation. I offer 20 minutes and I can talk to you about your plan and talk to you about some options for your estate planning. I look at it in a holistic manner. I'm not like a piecemeal estate planner because that doesn't serve you. Each of the documents does something differently. And so you want to make sure that you properly protect yourself and your assets and your family. And that's, if you don't even work with me, just get an estate plan done, get a will and all these documents in place. I really am pushing this because it's a great way to pass on wealth to the next generation. Buy some life insurance, pass it on. Even if you don't know what you need it for, just get some so that you can pass it on to somebody. So that's my soapbox. My contact information is on the next slide. You can visit my website, ibekwelaw.com. If you're interested in a further conversation, please book. I'm happy to speak to you. Again, like I said, I primarily do estate planning. It is 95% of my practice area. I also do a little bit of probate. If someone dies, and it just depends if they die with a will, because if they don't die with a will, I don't like to touch those. It's too messy. It takes months to close up a life sometimes. I really like to work with people who have planned in the past. So yeah, my contact information is on there. You can follow me on Instagram. You can call my office. It's probably best to go on the website if you do want to contact me, because I'll get to that quicker since I'm not always sitting by my phone due to the sheltering in place. I'm working from home and not in my office all the time. I don't know how long that took, Aklimas, so you have to tell me. Oh yeah, and he put my and he misspelled my website name, which is offensive. I know Aklimas very well, so I can talk to him this way. That is not how you spell it. I will retype it.
There you go.
Actually, I don't think I can.
That's me. That's me.
That's not how you.
I'll get it right. I'll get it right.
So yeah, it does. If anyone has any questions, I don't know how that's working, but I don't want to take Ron's time. So thank you.
All right. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll let Ron share online and just open it up to any questions for either one. So Ron, you're unmuted now. Do you need me to share anything? I know there was a website. Do you have now?
Yeah, I think Greg was going to take care of that. We've only been authorized to do, if we're doing something on an outside, we have to use Skype only. So our compliance people are, a little bit nervous about things that they don't quite. I know the pictures are a whole lot better in this on Zoom, and I tried my best. So Greg was going to pull up some information on the different types of insurance, but I want to take one step. First off, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm greatly honored that Greg thought of me to do this. Secondly, I have talked, Iffy, if I talk to everybody about a will, if everybody did it, you would be a wealthy, wealthy, wealthy woman. All I ever hear is, yeah, we're going to get it. Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, we're thinking about it. Yeah, and I had a friend of mine that I wrote a policy on 45 years ago, told him to get a will. He had 3 kids. He died without a will. And if you want a mess, die without a will. And I mean, it's very, very important. And I could not agree with you more, Iffy, on everything that you said, because in my practice, that's what we talk about all the time. You know, you got to get the insurance, and then you have to put the proper designations, because most people have kids and they have no idea what's going to happen with those kids. So you did wonderful. Okay, insurance really is the basic of your whole financial plan. When you look at, and I kind of use an analogy when I'm talking to somebody about okay, when you built this house, the roof did not go on first. The foundation was there, and the foundation is of the life insurance programs are basically designed to say, all right, if I don't make the plans that we have, I want to make sure that you have the plans and continue on living in the same home, keeping the kids in the same schools, driving the same type of vehicle, not having children to where they can't go to the birthday party because mom can't afford to buy them, a gift to take down the street to the kid. It's and I talk from personal experience. My father drowned when I was 9 years old, and my grandmother sold life insurance, but did not sell him one. So my mother worked. In fact, she passed away about 10 years ago. We used to give her Mother's Day card and Father's Day cards because she did both sides of it. So whatever type of insurance you get, there's no wrong insurance. The wrong insurance is not having any. And you want to have a policy that's in force when you die. Term insurance is very, very inexpensive. It's a great, if you need a lot of coverage and you don't have the budget, get the term insurance. It's better than nothing. The issue with term insurance is that, and I've been doing this for a long time, is that about 4% of all the term insurance actually will pay out in a death claim. Because I've been with Allstate for 25 years, and I get these calls. Hey, Ron, you know that 20-year term that you sold me? Yeah. Well, I just got the renewal on it, and it went from $25 a month to $377 a month. What can I do? Well, my question to them is, how's your health? And if the health has changed, they're either stuck with that or they got to convert it to a very high premium type policy. Whole life insurance is exactly what it is. It's a whole life policy. Advantages are that you will never not have insurance unless you decide not to keep it or not to pay the premiums. One of the advantages of the whole life insurance is that you may reach 35 or 40 years from now, and you're in your 70s, because I'm looking at a lot of young people, even you, Greg, with the idea of, okay, what can I do? I paid term insurance for 30 years and I got nothing. Okay, I paid a whole life policy. Now what can I do? Well, you have options. One of the options is that you can take the money that's in there. Is it an investment? Nope, it's a life insurance policy. But one of the options that it does take care of is that you can sit there and say, you know what, I really don't want to pay you guys anymore. I've got this much money in it. If I leave that money with you, how much insurance will that buy me in a lump sum? And they call it a paid up policy. So if you're 70 years old and you die at 92 years old, that policy is still in force, even though you haven't paid premiums for 20 years or so. Universal life, and Greg, I appreciate you doing this. It makes my life easy. Universal life is kind of, if you took a term policy and a whole life policy, they got married and they had a child and they called it universal. It is what they call flexible premium. And what I mean by that is that you can take this premium, I'm just going to use this illustration here of $136.67. You could, a whole life policy, going back for just a second, it's $271.03. You can't pay $271.04 or $271.02. The universal life, you can say, all right, you know what? I don't like those kind of numbers. I'm going to pay $150 a month. I'm going to pay $175 because that money will grow all tax deferred. But basically, if you take the money out of the policy several years from now, and you have put in more than you get back out, there's no taxation. So, which is a nice thing to do. It is flexible. We're in a situation right now where some people have lost their jobs. They may be paying $136.67 a month, and they'll call and say, "Hey, I'm out of work." And they'll say, "Okay, fine. You've had this policy for 4 or 5 years. Let me find out what the least amount of money you can put into this policy, and keep the policy in force. And then you can play catch up when you get back to work." And finally, on the variable life insurance, it's kind of it's kind of like having a 401k wrapped around a life insurance policy, or vice versa, because what happens is that we're controlling pretty much the investment side of the whole life and the universal life. On a variable life, you pick up what you want to be invested in. Are you very risky, where there's a packet of they call them sub accounts? They look, smell, and taste just like a mutual fund, but we can't call them a mutual fund. They're Fidelity accounts or T. Rowe Price accounts, American Funds account. But what they do is the markets, as the markets change and vary, the policies can grow. Typically, if you're going to buy a variable life policy, you want to do what they call overfunding. And I'll just use that $136. You don't want to pay $136 because it becomes like just a typical universal life policy. You want to put in, overfund in it $200, $250 per month. And then when you reach a certain age, typically in your 60s, you can start withdrawing that money as an income for the rest of your life. So, the benefits are the tax-free. Any insurance that you have at work is a bonus. If you can get 5 times your annual income, get it. But a lot of people, there are 30 million people right now that had insurance a month or 2 months ago that don't have it today. Because if they are not on if they were laid off, it's gone. So, please always get something that's on your own. And as Iffy said, the beneficiary, we can control the beneficiary, but you need to take it a step further and have your estate planning and attorney take it the steps farther that we don't do. So, any questions? Whatever questions you have, I'm fine.
Ron, for giving us that overview. I'm sharing that that website, and there's actually a couple more roles in it. So if you want to go to the Allstate website and kind of look at it in detail, they have this nice little grid that kind of allows you to see a comparison.
And if you just want to call me and get the one-on-one, that's fine too. I do have a website, and we are not fee-based, which means we don't charge anybody for talking to us. I will be more than happy to talk to anybody, help anybody, figure out a plan for them if they've got something already. I'm not in the business of saying, "Oh, let's get rid of that and get mine." I don't believe in the theory that if you're going to put a family room on, let's blow up the whole house. If you got something that's in place and it's very, very good policy, I'm going to be the last one to tell you ever to take it someplace else. But take and we can do dependent upon how much time you want, I can do a quick analysis in about 5 minutes. We've got a real quick. It used to be but when we did a plan, it took about 3 hours. Then we'd come back with about 140 pages. I watched the people fall asleep at page 70, and then we'd set the second appointment for pages 71 through 140. So yeah, any questions at all, I'm certainly here. And again, I thank you so much. Just give you an idea, if you are looking at coverage and you have had coronavirus, to get at least with us, and I think this is most companies now, you've got to be free of the coronavirus for 2 months and have a doctor certification that you are clear to apply for life insurance.
A quick question as it relates to, I think it's 2 questions for both Iffy and Ron. The question you mentioned, Iffy, in your presentation, that you don't deal with the life insurance part. Can you give clarity to that? Because I think it may be misunderstood.
Okay, so what I'm saying is there is something called can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
a non-probate asset. And what that means is there are certain things that you can buy outside of setting up an estate plan that your estate plan will not control. One of those things is life insurance. So, for example, if you go and get some life insurance and I'll give you an example I had in real life. So I had a client, he worked for one of the major tech companies here in Austin, recently divorced person who had, $500,000 of life insurance through his employer. I was probating his estate, no will, which is the reason I'm never doing this again with no wills. It's just such a mess. And his parents, they had no kids. His parents are the ones who hired me to close up his life as their attorney and, all of that jazz. When it came to the life insurance, even though he had gotten divorced, he had forgotten to change his ex's name on the life insurance. And he had a federal plan, which is like an ERISA plan. And it doesn't matter what your divorce decree in Texas says, they pay out to whomever is listed on the plan. So that means that his ex-wife was going to get $500,000. If he had set up an estate plan or something like that, he could have directed who that money should go to. Even if he had a plan that say followed the intestate laws, like I mentioned, if you have no plan, there's a metrics that it would follow. It would say it would go up to his parents because he didn't have any children. However, in a plan like that, they paid it out to his ex-wife. And I had to send her a nice letter and say, hey, this was an unintended consequence. Would you be willing to disclaim your interest and pay it out to the parents instead? And I was like, no woman, she's gonna take the money and go. But she disclaimed half of her interest in it, which was very kind and a little bit, greedy, but still, she didn't have to disclaim anything because ultimately that insurance company was not going to pay. They don't care even if you have a will or not. Whoever is on that policy is getting that money unless they disclaim their interest and say, you can pay my interest to somebody else. And so that's what I'm saying. Your estate plan will not control that because that is a contract that you have that is outside of estate planning. Same with life insurance. Now, what you can do with your life insurance is if you set up a trust, you can say that you want the trust to be a beneficiary or even and Ron, you can correct me, you probably do it. Your trust can receive that money and then it can go to whomever you want to. So that's an option for doing so. So just know that estate planning works hand in hand with life insurance, but it does not control life insurance. It's something that you have and you can get wealth quickly upon your death and do a lot of things that you may not feel like you have the cash to do now. And depending on how you set up your estate plan, you can use life insurance to accomplish those things. Is that clear as mud?
You did good.
Yes, and I think that was a piece I wanted to clarify because I think you're saying that if you have a will, the life insurance policy trumps the will.
Yes.
But the best way to make sure that the will is locked and loaded with the trust is to have the life insurance policy is in line with the trust or estate plan, is to say in the beneficiary section, give this to my real estate, estate planning or trust or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Greg,
and you can do that go ahead, Ron.
No, typically with, if you don't have a will and a trust, then you put the beneficiary, and then as I recommend somebody to go see someone like Iffy. All right, once you get your will and your trust, or however you're going to put those pieces together, call us back so we can put the beneficiary right in line with what your wishes are.
Exactly. That is exactly what I tell people. I say, when you set up your estate plan, if you said, I wanted to first go to my husband and then to my children in equal share, then I say, make sure that your life insurance says that as well. First person can be the husband, and then maybe you set it into your children, but you have some sort of testamentary trust. So if something were to happen, they can receive it. And so that's how it works hand in hand, is when we've done your estate plan, make sure that it lines up with all your best, when you do open enrollment, if you work for a company, or you select all your products, or you have your own personal insurance product on the side, make sure that all is looked at and that you always update your beneficiary designations.
And I think the reason why this specifically came up as a very important, I repeat, I want everybody to understand the importance of this. At a minimum, the estate could let those who remain know all the policies that you have. Like, especially if you're single, right? Maybe are single with a child or whatever the case may be. I know pretty much the things that I have, but how will I let the world know the things that I have when I die? Does that make sense? Because I'm silent at that time. Last time I talked, a dead man can't talk. So at a minimum, the estate plan lets you know what things you do have. And so at a minimum, they can go there. Like, for example, majority of us, those who work at Dell automatically have a life policy. But that's not a given if if the family members don't know. You know what I mean? And so how do they know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other piece comes down to simple stuff like the what you want. Like, if there are percentages of a policy that you want to give to one person or another person,
right?
The usage of a house, that's an asset. Who gets that asset and things like that. So now you're actually separating. So maybe you say, okay, I have a balance left on my house. I want that balance to be paid off, and the house is then left for my daughter. You know what I mean? So now I can use I need to basically state I have my life policy to pay off the balance of my loan for my house. The house is, so that's a total conjunction of, and tell me if I'm wrong on this. The life policy pays off the balance of the house, then the remaining goes to XYZ person, and then the house is now owned by my daughter, for example, and it is to be managed by XYZ person until my daughter turns 18 and can make the decisions on her own. Does that make sense? Am I off? How does that work between you two?
Greg, I think if what you just did is, all right, we're going to do the beneficiary, and that's going to be the lump sum of what you're insured for. At that point, when you want all this is how I want this structured, that's when you go to Iffy, and she puts the documentation together as how you want everything done. Am I correct, Iffy?
Yes, and so it's so important what you just said, Greg, because think about how complicated it is as far as how you want your property to go, right? If you die and nobody even knows you have a life insurance policy because they don't know, or the employer doesn't know who to contact, for example, or it's in limbo because you left it to a minor and maybe they can't receive it because you never set up anything for them to receive it, then they're not going to even be able to do the pay off the house. I want the rest to go to my daughter, and when she's 18, do this and that and the other. A huge part of the estate planning process is to let people know. And that might be, you set up the executor, the person that's going to carry out all your wishes, and they know, here are a list of all the accounts that I have. So when I have my clients do an intake, I have them list all their accounts and the balances, just generally, just so they can see, oh yeah, I have that. My wife's not on it. My husband's not on that one. They have these accounts all listed. So they have a place that has all their, the list of all the documents, all the accounts that they have or policies that they've purchased. That way you have a running list of, okay, these are the things that the executor would need to know. You can keep that in a binder. You can write them a letter, and it can say, my objective is that no one will fight. You know, you can start a letter like that, because if you try and do an estate plan where you're like, if you fight, you're not getting, the estate plan doesn't do all of that. The part that also works with having the funds in a product or from your savings or whatever, having a having your estate plan done, you also need to communicate all of this to whoever your point people are, whoever you're designating as your agents, whoever you're designating as your executor, and lay out your wishes to them. Let them know where to find everything. Let them know what all the passwords are. You know, have all those things put together, plan for it, update it, and make sure that they're updated so that they can follow out your wishes. If there's no plan, nobody knows that that's what you would have wanted. They may just think, oh, you didn't have a will, you know, let's just sell the house, and whoever gets the money is whoever the state says gets the money. And maybe you had other dreams and hopes for it, right? And so communication is a huge part of estate planning and that whole process.
We have one question. I was going to ask it. Go ahead, Tanya, you're unmuted.
Okay. Hi, everybody. This has been so helpful, and hats off to NSBE AP for putting this on. Like kind of like Iffy said, you really don't want to talk about it, but this is a good time to talk about it. We've had so much death around us, unfortunately, and I send my condolences to any family member who's had a death as a result of COVID-19 or just generally during this season. I have a question for Ron and for Iffy. Great job to both of you. And Iffy, my question is based upon paperwork. Mm-hmm. So I know of a situation where someone was assigned as power of attorney over his parents, and then the father passed away, and so they had a trust, and it was exactly what they wanted. The parents knew exactly what they wanted, and so the father passed, and now the mom is a bit dementiated, and she's not really tracking with a lot of things. So what the son decides that he was going to do is have her sign all this paperwork to undo what the parents' last wishes were. And so basically he's manipulating everything so he can get all of the benefits, if you will. Mm-hmm. Is there some type of form or legal action that can be taken so that he can't do that? Or because he's away, he can get away with that? I mean, how do we?
There's a whole area of the law. It's called elder abuse. And because he is trying to basically commit fraud, there's a way to go after that. It depends on her level of incompetency. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, you can't have her if she truly is dementia and has lost so much of her ability to consent. It's too late at that point. You need the court to come in and have someone be appointed as a guardian ad litem. And then have someone put in place as a guardian to make decisions on her behalf to make sure that she's protected and that nobody's taking advantage. And so what you'd want to do in a situation like that, where I had a client who did her estate plan, but her brother, her parents were multimillionaires, and they had set up trusts for their kids. They only had 2 kids, and the brother lived in Fort Worth with the parents. The father had passed away. The mother had severe dementia, and he had power of attorney, and he was changing everything to his name because it's such a broad power. Like I mentioned earlier, can easily be abused. And the person who owns the property, they're losing their capacity. They're losing their minds, literally. And in that instance, you can have a lawyer come in and start proceeding. You have to show that this person is working against the interest of what the person who gave them the power of attorney would have wanted them to do. But the problem with estate planning, sometimes people give that power over and they're like, oh, I did my will, I'll catch you at my death. And it does not work like that. It needs to be reviewed, kind of like when there's a qualifying event, when you're doing open enrollment, a marriage, a death, a move. Look at all your stuff just so you know it's a living document. It's not something that you set and forget because you don't want to think about it because it's so morbid. It's something that will help you prevent you from being, fleeced by a family. I mean, it always happens with family. Let's be real. Like, everyone's like, oh yeah, they'll figure it. No, they won't figure it out. They'll fight. More likely they'll fight if it has to do with property or have bad feelings. And so, you know, that's a whole area of the law. I don't do any elder law, but there are lots of attorneys here who help in that sort of situation where there is abuse or mismanagement of funds. There are ways that you can combat that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And do I have time to ask Ron a question too?
Sure.
Is
Go
that
ahead.
okay? Okay, thank you. So Ron, I was hoping that you could talk a little bit more about, if I can read my chicken scratch here, I think it says variable insurance. You had
Yes.
mentioned that it's like a 401k and a money market and all that wrapped into one. And then when you had mentioned also that it could potentially be used as an opportunity for income for life, at what age would I'm sorry, it's more than one question apparently, but what age would someone have, what age would someone have to be in order to tap into that?
It really depends on when they started it, because
Okay.
you know, to see how much money is accumulated into it. And then when you start to take your retirement, or whenever you take a look at it and see if it's done what it's supposed to do. You know, right now we're in a crazy market. It's going like this. So some of the values are down, some of the values are up. So it's one of those things that you got to kind of take a look at one of those things every couple of years. If you're, and again, like I say, I don't know how old, you know, you are, and I'm not going to ask, but unless we were one-on-one, then I would ask. And when you're younger, it really works out much better than when you're older, because of there's internal costs in there, there's insurance costs, and then there's the accounts. The accounts all have a charge too. It's kind of, if you want to just kind of separate, and again, I can't use dirty words, but if you have a mutual fund account, every time you put in a deposit, they're charging you a little bit of a fee. And all these funds do charge fees. So if you have that kind of wrapped into your insurance policy, there's going to be fees in there. And with that, I'm supposed to be giving you a prospectus, which is about 85 pages.
And telling you, just to kind of go into that same vein, Ron and I have known each other, I guess I was 26, I'm 45 now. And I signed up with a policy as a result of a NSBE meeting, just like we're having right now. We had a keynote speaker come in, and he was pretty much, at that time, he was my age, and an engineer, and he had committed to it, got real familiar with the policy. And I signed up for a variable life. That is what I have, right, Ron? A variable unit.
If you're asking me in front of everybody, yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with you telling them. That's why I invited you, because, and I tell people all the time, it's like that. Even though I started really early, I liked those pieces of the policy, the ability to, like, if I just walk away from this, I can, if I say, okay, I don't want to pay anymore, whatever I put in, I have, not all of it, but I have put money into it, and I walk away with a surrender value of it. I had the ability, like I tell everybody, who's not my ex-wife, but my wife's ring was, I borrowed from my policy to buy her ring. And I remember but I paid, you pay it back just like a 401k, but I've left jobs. The job that I was at when I bought the policy is no longer there. So it followed me throughout these last 19 years. And then I was unemployed for a while. So I was able to, kind of what Ron mentioned earlier, is like when you lose a job, you have the ability to kind of scale it back as low as it'll go, without deactivating it. And he allowed me to do that. He and I worked together, and I was able to survive until I got back to the company, got back employed, and then I just started paying it back. Just not paying it back, but just really paying it back and getting back at the regular rate that I was putting money in. And this has been 19 years. Now, the cool thing that I actually say, especially to my youngsters on the call right now, is that the price of that thing now is substantially more than it was when I was 26. I wonder why. So
it's not expensive. It's more expensive if you were to buy it now.
It's cost.
Yeah.
So
not when the prices don't go up as you get older.
Exactly. And that was a quarter. And to be honest with you, I'll tell you, it was a $250,000 policy. It was a $250,000 policy that I bought. If I would have died the day after it became deactivated, even at 26, some people in my family would have been able to knock it out. And even now, 19 years later, it's still $250,000 policy that if I die, it goes from. So I really want people to understand, but the crazy thing about it, from my experience, even though I have that benefit, I do not have a will yet. And so it really just started. That's the piece that really just started eating away with me now with COVID just hitting. You never know if you're going to be the one that die. So I'm in the process of, unfortunately not you, if you have another friend of mine.
All right. I don't care who you go to.
I can
Just get
recommend a
one.
good attorney.
Yeah, I have one. She's a friend.
I can recommend a good one.
Yeah, I've already started talking to her. And we're going back and forth right now what I need to send her and everything to get it all squared away. But this is something I think is really important. But once again, even the guys, especially, I don't know about other companies, but just by you working at Dell, you get a certain amount of life policy that needs to be, that you should definitely know where it's going. And you can add more to it, but just by default, I think you get 2 times your salary, which is pretty dope. A lot of money for somebody who's working at Dell and you're survivors or whatever the case may be. The one thing that I want to say for you, Ron, is can you go back to that slide? I think it was the piece that I want to kind of go back, especially scale down to the term life. That was a huge thing. I just got lucky and with my policy, but I didn't realize that term life, it literally is a term. So if you've been paid, like for example, if I would have done a 20-year term policy, I would almost be about to have to re-up. And of course that price will possibly be much, much more expensive. So you see right there where it says coverage length. Can you go deeper into that, Ron? Like, cause right now I got lucky and chose the variable universal life, which is my rate for life.
I'll give you a quick history on how term insurance came about. First off, term insurance has been around for years. I mean, and we even had term policies when I started back when we used to chisel them into, the policy was chiseled in stone because that's how long ago it was. But today, when you look at a term policy, we'll use the example of 20 years. The 20 years, years ago, when you reached 20 years, it was over. Well, there was quite a few people that were uninsurable at the end of that 20 years, and they had not taken advantage of what they call a conversion privilege, which I'll explain in a second. So the policy was over. Well, people started complaining to go to the insurance commissioner. So the insurance commissioners and the companies got together and they said, okay, we're not going to let these things go, but we don't know what somebody's health is going to be from, and I'll use you, Greg, 26 years old, excellent health, no problems. We don't know what we're going to have when we have a 46-year-old. And it could be, it's perfect, or there could be diabetes, blood pressure, heart condition, prostate cancer. We don't know what we're going to get. So the companies design these things to really take your worst possible health at the end of the 20 years and raise the premium to, well, I just had one the other day. It was a $250,000 policy. Guy was paying, I think, about $60 a month, and it went to $877 a month. So not a good thing. Now, fortunately, this gentleman was in good health, so we reapplied for new coverage. But that's kind of the design on that thing. Term insurance, and again, I sell a lot of term insurance because if you got 3 or 4 or 5 kids, you typically, you've got the great need, but you may not have the money that you want to put away for that type of policy. So the main objective of all life insurance is life insurance. It's whether it's $500,000 to a family or $5 million to a family. The thing is, we cannot replace you. All I can do is help replace the money that you were earning and you wanted to leave to your family. So term insurance, does it have its place? Absolutely. Permanent life insurance, people are living longer. Average lifespan for a male is 78 years old, and I think for women it's about age 83. So if you buy a term policy when you're 45 years old, even if you bought a 30-year term, you may be out of insurance. And after that, to try to buy a policy at age 75, you can't afford it. So did that kind of answer your question, Greg, in a long way around?
Yeah, it did, and I think that's the piece that never really paid attention to until I just happened to see somebody else. Until I just happened to see somebody else to mention term. I'm like, what's term? I think mine was supposed to be for life.
Where it has its place is, let's say that you had a side business, and you said, hey, I'm gonna do a little bit over here, and I had to take out a $200,000 SBA loan for 10 years. They're gonna make you take a $200,000 policy, and if all you're trying to do is satisfy that note, then the term policy is a perfect fit. If you've got, again, a lot, family and a lot of needs, and the budget's not quite there, do term insurance. And then at some point, and when I said convertibility, typically within the first 7 to 8 years of a policy, you have a convertibility period in there where if your health was to change, let's say that you were preferred, and then all of a sudden you have a health event, a heart attack or whatever. And I'll give you a real example. I wrote a guy 20 years ago, a term policy. That's all he wanted. Well, his term came up to due. He's got ALS. He's got less than a year and a half to live. His wife is paying $13,000 a year for that policy because he can't get it. He can't get any other insurance. And what we did is we actually ended up converting it over to a permanent form of life insurance. And this way here, if we design it to run, even, he's going to live 2 more years, but it's designed to run at least 20 more years. So
yeah, we have one.
Go ahead.
We have one more question, Norbert.
Sorry.
Yuma, before we do to wrap up. I appreciate you guys. So Norbert, you're unmuted now if you want to ask your question.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Hi, this is Norbert. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Iffy, for the great presentation. I think the question I have is going to be asked to Iffy. So how do you drive or start conversation with your family members without them thinking that you think about their death or you have bad intentions about their will? How can we start that conversation?
Oh, this is such a fantastic question. The best way to start is by doing it yourself and using that as a lead-in, explaining why you did it and what prompted you to do it, because it's easier to lead by example. Especially, my family's from Nigeria, and there are certain things you don't talk about because it's such a taboo. Like, it's almost like you're putting death on somebody if you ask them, have you estate plan? But in my instance, my dad passed away 16 years ago with no will, but he had life insurance and he was a physician. And my mom taught at a local high school and was able to not only stay in her house, in her little gated community, but also pay off her house in the last, they had a 15-year mortgage, but because of that product. And so the first thing my mom did after she had to probate his estate is go get her entire estate planning done. And this was during my first year of law school, and I knew nothing about estate planning. But she said the process of going through that, even though there were no info, we were all minors for all intents and purposes, very young adults. We weren't fighting, my brothers and me, over her estate. It was all going to her, and there were no, other children and things like that to complicate it. But it took a long time, and it was very expensive. And so you can give anecdotal stories of what you hear. A lot of times, and I don't want to assume that your family is from a different country, but if they are, they may have the assumptions that this is how it is if you don't do anything where I'm from. And it's just not like that here in the States. You do not get automatic access to anything. It's not a bygone conclusion. Someone will have to wrap up your estate. And if they're of the mindset, like, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to do it, there's nothing you can do about that. But if you do yours and you can give the examples for why you're doing, I'm doing this so my kids can, all that I've worked for, it can be passed on properly to them. I'm doing this because I want to make sure that at my death, everything's taken care of. I have instructions so nobody has to fight, and then we give the money to lawyers instead of passing it on to the next generation, because lawyers always win. I tell people, you can do your estate plan, or you can have somebody hire me to do probate, or somebody in my office can do that, not me. Either way, the lawyer is winning. And so the best thing to do is to have a plan. I also tell people, you know, the best time to talk about estate planning is holidays, or during this COVID situation is a great time too. You can hear stories about, you know, all these doctors and what they're seeing in the ICU units, not as a scare tactic, but the reality of it is that a lot of them are young people coming in. They're also having elderly people come in, as was, you know, first reported. It's mostly affecting elderly who have no plan, and you know, they don't go in there thinking they're going to die, but when they do, it's mayhem, because nothing has been written down and they have no idea where their bank accounts are. If it's the holidays, I usually tell people, hey, talk to your parents about, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your grandkids to know about you? Do you want them to inherit anything from you? Like, do you want them to take your tapestries or your china? And do you know who would want what? And, you know, have you ever written that down? And just having these conversations. There are also, AARP has really helpful information for starting the discussion, all kinds of workbooks that you can use for elderly parents. A lot of the elder care organizations also have booklets and workbooks. And at Klimas, maybe I can just send you a link for that you can use in order to start the conversation going, especially for your parents. Because the reality is, a lot of parents just think my kids will take care of me, but their kids aren't set up for that at all. They need long-term care insurance. They need to know who's going to house them, how they're going to pay for nursing homes, if that's the option. It's serious, you know, and so it's an unfortunate conversation. Nobody really wants to have it, but it is one that must be had, because we're all aging and our parents are living longer and longer and longer. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Iffy, for that response. Thanks everybody for participating. We're gonna touch on a few other items and then make a quick introduction. I'll be able to leave the line open if our guest speakers are willing to hang around, and I'll give the line for everybody to kind of free for all if they have some things to follow up on for a few more minutes. But thank you again. We normally at this point with a small token, but since we're virtual, I will hand off a handshake, and we'll work on getting that small token to you post the meeting. But thank you, Ron. Thank you, Iffy, for sharing the information.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hey, Clement, can I say one quick thing? On that little slide that Greg was nice enough to pull up, and now up on the upper left-hand corner, it says "Get a quote." And if you call, you will get somebody in the home office or a regional office. You will not have an agent. They'll just work it right out of there, and there will not be the personal touch, so to speak. Okay. So anybody?
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm gonna post your email to the chat as well.
Okay.
If that's okay. We'll allow us to follow up directly if that's okay.
I appreciate that.
Greg, can you post that for me? Yeah, no problem. Just wanted to give an update on for our membership drive status. We've gotten through the full year, and we got halfway there. I'm excited that we at least have grown membership to the point where we can stay engaged locally. We're still going to push to move that number up to 100 by next year, and hopefully you're able to continue your membership going into next year, and you felt the benefit of that $20. We are able to accept membership dues via the website, nsbeap.org, if you have questions. One other announcement I wanted to mention, I know we have a number of small business owners in the group, and there is a City of Austin disparity study that's happening, that's in the works right now. And I wanted to just post a link to that as well. They had their kickoff. This is important in terms of engaging small businesses, minority-owned businesses, for work and opportunities within the city and county of Travis. And so there's a disparity study where they'll be reaching out to small business owners for input, for feedback. And I think this is the opportunity for many of us who have our own businesses to, just share what the process is, what the process has been for them as individual business owners, but also to kind of give guidance in terms of what would be helpful and beneficial to growing your business. So I posted a link to that. There's some questions that they have answered, some frequently asked questions, and there are a couple of webinars I know that are reaching out. So I'll follow up with you, Latanya, regarding those grants and those opportunities. As I get them, I've had a few, and I'm on a few listservs, so I'll start figuring out ways to spread that out. I think there was one introduction we wanted to make, Greg, real quick, for another guest on the call.
Yes, I wanted to give a shout out to my agent. So specifically, Ron is my agent specifically with Allstate dedicated to life insurance. But I also reached out to Chuck and Ron simultaneously. And I want to give Chuck an opportunity to just give greetings. He's my agent for everything else, auto, home, and so forth. I want to give him a shout out as well. Chuck, your line's open if you want to say something.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, guys. Really interesting stuff. I've known Ron for a long time. If you brought insurance from Ron 20 plus years ago, he's about 110 then. So as he would jokingly say, but thanks for the opportunity. I know. Thanks for the opportunity. I do a lot of commercial and private insurance. So if you have any questions, please look me up, and I'm more than happy to answer that. But that was a great meeting tonight. You guys talked about some really good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks again, Chuck, for joining. I appreciate it.
All right. Like I said, I'll go ahead and open it up if there are any other questions or.
If you, hey, Cleveland, you're talking, but we can't hear you. I see your lips moving.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just gonna say I'll leave the line open. I just unmuted everybody just so if you have some questions or comments or announcements, feel free to share them now. But we're going to adjourn officially now, just in terms of recording. But I'll stay on for a few if we want to chat or follow up with any questions.